Good morning, everybody. I am going to get rid of this now. There we go. Welcome to writing.ie. It's lovely to see you all again. We are live again at the Writing Game. We're going out on the writing.ie Facebook page, as you can probably see, and also on the YouTube channel. So welcome to anybody who is watching us on YouTube. My name is Sam Blake. I'm a crime writer, and I'm going to be bringing in literary agent Simon Trewin and Professor of Creative Writing Scarlett Thomas just in 1 second. So if you give me a second just to do a jiggle. I'll bring Simon in first. Here he comes. There, and Scarlett. Just count you in. Here we go, Simon, you're live. And there's Scarlett. So I will disappear and I will leave you in Simon's capable hands. Have a little chat about writing.
Hello, Simon.
I must pop back in because I think Simon's lost his sound. Can you hear us, Simon? He has. He needs to come back out and go in, don't worry. He can't hear us at all. He can't see us either, I don't think. Anyway, not to worry. We always have a few technical issues with this. So I'm going to kick off and then he'll realise that he needs to sort his sound out now. He can't see himself. I'm going to get rid of him. And then you can chat to me instead, Scott. Right. You have an amazing array of books, don't you? You've got children's books, the series, and then you've got adult books, and then you've written this fantastic book, Monkeys With Typewriters as well. So lots to talk about. I'm going to see if we can bring him back in. Simon, can you hear us now? No, I don't think he knows we're there. I don't know what's going on.
He's just getting on with some emails.
He's just doing his own thing, isn't he? So, oh dear. So talk to me, just take us right back to the start when you started writing, Scarlett, if you don't mind. And then we can get into how you became a professor of creative writing. And I will text Simon while you're chatting. So take us right back to the beginning of your sort of creative writing career, if you like.
Okay, wow. So we're going back to, 1997, 1998-ish, and or even further back than that, to be honest. So I was born in 1972. Let's go right back, and I think I tried to write my first novel when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and my mum used to kind of staple together bits of paper for me, and I'd try and do pictures because obviously when I was young, all the books that I read had pictures in them, but I was shit at drawing, so that didn't work. And then, but I knew I loved storytelling. And I remember being about 6 years old and writing my book, The Disappearing Floor, and having a plot problem. Like, it's one of my earliest memories is having a plot problem and not knowing what to do in Act 2 of The Disappearing Floor. And so that's right back. So I've been doing it since I was a kid. Hello, Simon.
Hello. I don't know what happened then.
That's great. We kicked off there because we didn't have any sound from your end.
Okay. At the moment, so you can go away for another 15 minutes.
We've just taken Scarlett right back to her writing career, and she was talking about writing little books as a child, which I think is fascinating because I think Adele Parks did that too. So I think whole writing as a child is just a big. Anyway, I'm going to go. Excuse me. I shall get out of the sandwich here.
So that was the fun bit of the interview. You've got me now. Hello.
Everyone's going to be wanting to know what happened between when I was 6 and when I was about 27, but that's fine. You go.
Yeah, I remember Adele Parks said that her grandpa used to pay her 50p on a Sunday to write a little book, which was a fantastic way. And so I want to know, have you still got any of these little books that you wrote?
Yeah, I think my mum's got them somewhere. So yeah, The Disappearing Floor.
Oh, good title.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good. It was about a group of children that get into this spooky old house and the floor disappears. But I was just telling Sam that I experienced having a plot problem for the first time because once I'd got them in through this window, and I knew that there was quite a long period between that and the end, but I didn't quite know what to put in it. So interesting. Act 2 problems.
Okay. So you're not going to return to The Disappearing Floor. I think it's a title that's too good to leave behind, really.
Well, I mean, it's still on the slate, right? I've got like you know, I've literally got a note called My Slate, so I'll put it on because it's
We'll
not.
come back to that. I don't know, did Sam introduce you and talk about the various books you've written?
No, she said, tell us your life story from the very beginning.
Okay.
Well, she didn't say that. I'm lying.
So we'll maybe jump from the year from the age of 6. But I mean, you've been publishing really consistently for must be about 25 years now, I'm guessing.
Yeah, 21 or 22.
Bright Young Things was 2001, but there were the 3 Lily Pascale crime novels before that. I think The Seed Collectors was your 9th novel, and we worked together on End of Mr. Y and PopCo. You've also written 3 books of children's fiction, Dragon's Green being the first one, and a very, very influential book of non-fiction called Monkeys, that's plural, Monkeys With Typewriters. Again, we'll come back to that. And a book about tennis. So
don't forget oligarchy.
An oligarchy, indeed. So you are always writing, I'm guessing. Is there ever a day when you're not writing?
No, well, no, actually, yes. But it depends what you call writing, because actually, like hitting the keyboard and making that clacky keyboard noise, I'm doing that most days, but it's not writing fiction. It's not writing the stuff I want to write, but I'm always thinking, and always the kind of fabrication or putting together of a story. I'm doing that all the time. So I guess if you count that as writing, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this series of interviews, we've asked writers about what they consider to be a good day's writing. And I know Joanne Harris, I think if she wrote 350 words a day, that's great. So if she gets to 351, she's kind of in credit. And I was amazed actually how small that word rate was in terms of writing. But I think what you say, writing isn't just about typewriters, is it? It's about thinking, wandering around. No. And monkeys, yeah.
I mean, for me, a great writing day, which I've had a few of these recently, and I'm writing television at the moment. That's, I mean, right now at this moment in autumn 2020, what I'm doing is writing for television. So I've got all these diagrams. Actually, I didn't put this here for this reason. It's not that impressive, but it's my blank 5-act triangle, which just happens to be there. So a really good day's writing for me would be to get up since 8 o'clock, get a cup of tea, come straight to my desk, and all my good thinking happens at basically early. It didn't used to be like that. I used to write at 3 o'clock in the morning, but now I'm old. It happens in the morning. So I'll do a bit of writing, a bit of plotting. At the moment, it's all plotting. I'm trying to break a season of a television show. So it's plotting and characterization and research. So yeah, I just love it. I mean, go and have a shower, think about it in the shower. Like I have my second best ideas every day in the shower, and just all day, go for a bike ride in the afternoon, glass wine in the evening, done.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's coming across with a lot of writers, that early starts are good for creativity. It's like going to the gym, you kind of sets you up for the day, doesn't it? If you have
only if you're an early start kind of person. So back in the day when I was writing Bright Young Things and living in this place in Torquay where I'd get icicles on the inside of the windows during the winter, I'd wake up at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, watch Neighbours, take the dog for a walk, eat McDonald's, play video games, feel guilty, hate myself, go on whatever the internet was then, and then start writing at about 9 o'clock at night.
Sounds like a perfect day, doesn't it? Really?
Well, no. Well, I prefer my days now, to be honest. But because in those days there was a lot of lead in, you know, and there was a lot of, oh, I'm a terrible person, I'm a bad writer, I can't do this. And then suddenly at midnight, I'd be like, yay, I'm on fire. I used to smoke all the time then as well.
Wow. Okay. Well, so what I'm interested in is how do we go from that person to where you are now? And what I didn't mention is, of course, you're also professor of creative writing at University of East, the University of Kent, my old university.
Rival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of teaching people how to do it as well. And do you think creative writing can be taught?
Oh, it's like being back in my job interview in 2004.
I know. Yeah, I know. I wrote the questions for that. Yeah.
Obviously, I had to say yes then.
Mm.
Yeah, this is an interesting question that
We can come back to it if you like, because I think it's quite an unfair one to throw at you.
No, but my answer is going to be the same if we come back to it, which involves a lot of and looking around and making my head go that way and that way. Because, I mean, yes, there are people who soak up creative writing teaching, and you tell them 3 key things, and their life changes and they're off. And then there are other people that you can throw like your 1,000 best things about creative writing at, and for whatever reason, it doesn't stick with them. They're still wonderful people, possibly destined to be something else.
Yeah.
So I don't think the same experience of creative writing can be taught to everyone in the same way. But yeah, I mean, I'm still trying to teach myself aspects of writing. I'm such a nerd. I'm always reading a book on plot structure or screenwriting, or like I'm always learning, and there's always more to learn, which is exciting.
Because I know when you were, I remember years ago, I think you were the first person who told me about the Stephen King book.
Oh, on writing, it's a great book.
But that must be a kind of core. Is that a kind of core set text for all of your students, alongside Monkeys with Typewriters, obviously?
Yeah, it's one of the ones that's always coming back. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. You know, I studied at your university. I studied drama, which was academic, but with some practical. And I think there isn't a day that goes by that I don't use something I learned from that, even though I'm not working in that world. And I think learning, I mean, surely a lot of the time you're teaching people to be better at what they are. You can't make someone a good writer, can you? You can make them a better writer, but there has to be a kind of core competency, doesn't there?
Yeah, and I think being a writer, whatever that is, involves so many different skills, and most people don't have them all. So you get people who are great at plotting and structure,
Yeah.
but not so good at the depth or the characterization. You get people who come up with wonderful characters but don't know quite how to put them in a structure. So, and then there are all other aspects as well. I mean, I've come across people who are utterly brilliant at dialogue. Like that's their thing. That's what they can do.
Yeah.
And when it comes to a description of an interior, they just don't have them. So I think with each individual case, you can identify areas where somebody might need to learn or improve. And I think right up to the highest level, like I say, I'm always improving or trying.
Do you, I mean, that dialogue one is a really interesting one. And I think if I ever have a writer who has problems with dialogue, I say, have you actually read this out loud? People don't speak like this. And and I think reading, I think it was Adele Parks said at the end of every night and every evening, she reads out loud to her husband everything she's written that day. So that must be the real test of a good marriage. I would have thought that. But
Yeah.
I think it does. I think you begin to hear it in your own voice if you begin to start losing confidence in what you've written, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And then voice is so important. I mean, voice comes through not just dialogue, as you know, but also the voice that the novel or story or whatever is told in, and who that sounds like and what that is, and if you're controlling that or it's controlling you, or how it's all working. There's just so much.
And do you find with your students that some people they worry too much about finding a voice?
No, it's something that I don't know whether it's gone out of fashion or it's not something people talk about so much, but after 20 years of teaching, I think if somebody asked me what's the most important thing that you can learn, or what's the most important aspect of creative writing, I would say voice.
Yeah.
Because if you get the voice right for projects, then I think everything else falls into place. And my last novel, Oligarchy, which is kind of quite a short novel, it's a black comedy. Oh, there it is.
There it is. You say the word and it appears. Yeah.
It's a kind of dark comedy about eating disorders set in a girls' boarding school. And I knew if I was going to get away with that, the voice was going to have to be absolutely spot on. And luckily, it just sort of came to me in a slightly weird supernatural way. But it's almost like being haunted, by this acerbic, slightly sardonic voice that's sometimes it's a dead girl, and sometimes it's all the girls, and sometimes it's
Right.
one girl, but it's like a third person. It probably just looks like a normal voice to anybody else, but to me, it was all those things at once. It was quite exciting to work with.
And I mean, you mentioned the length of that book, and some of your earlier novels are significantly longer, aren't they?
Mm.
And I just sort of wondered, was this a story that in some way the power of it would be dissipated if it was told at length, or was it just something, I don't know, I'm interested in why some books are, some of your books are super long, aren't they?
Yeah, not super long. I think the longest is maybe PopCo's the longest. In the end of Mr. Wise, maybe 130,000, and I think
Right.
it's more like 160. Seed Collectors 110-ish, and then Oligarchy is like 52,000 words long, so super short. And the reason for that really is that it was kind of an accidental novel. It started as a short story.
Indeed.
I was trying to write a collection of short stories. I'm not actually as good at writing short stories as I would like to be. So I was really trying to develop this particular one. And as I went, it just kind of turned into a novel, but a short one. And I was very, very inspired when I was writing it by The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which is 39,000.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Golly.
And there's
right.
in that book. It's super short. And so I thought, yeah, the whole concept of the novella and what you can do with it was suddenly really fascinating for me.
So you talked earlier on about you showed us that triangle, which was your five act diagram. Did you plot out Oligarchy before you wrote it? Did you know it was going to be a short book, or did it just find a level?
I think it just sort of found a level, and yeah, Oligarchy's not that plot heavy. In fact, it's very voice and character driven, and it's quite sort of moody and atmospheric. So I think when you're reading it, you're not necessarily reading it for lots of plot. It's more for the vibe of the girls' school and the humour and the terrible moment when the eating disorder men turn up and, try and give these girls kind of psychological grounding, which goes horribly wrong. But the 5-act triangle is more a television thing. It's you need a lot more plot for an episode of television, arguably, than you need for a novel. So and it's good to help.
I mean, it seems to me there are more obvious rules about writing for television. I mean, I think we have that subliminal feeling when we're watching something. We kind of know, we know the beats, don't we, for TV drama, and we kind of know that, particularly on ITV, we know when it's heading towards a break, which I always find like American television. It's like every 6 minutes someone says, "Well, Scarlett," and then there's a pause, and they go, "Well, Scarlett," and you think, really? But a book, there are no rules really. But do you storyboard your books in a way that other authors do? Is it all on a chart?
Well, yes and no. I think every book's been different, and I am, like I said before, I am quite nerdy about structure and kind of the engineering that goes on behind a project. But having said that, I mean, I do find television and novels completely different. And I think good television, you can't see the beats in the way you can on certain ITV shows that you but in network television, you definitely can, especially those moments you talk about. But with novels, I mean, sometimes I do a table on Microsoft Word. I used to in the days before Word just started crashing all the time on my computer. Now I use Evernote, which I love, and they're not paying me to say that. Anyway, sometimes I'll do a table, sometimes I'll do a diagram, sometimes it's just in my head, sometimes I'll write a shit version first, all the way through to the end, and think it's amazing. Like, it's not like I think I'm writing a first draft that I'm going to rewrite, but I think this is great, and then I get to the end, read it through and realize there are gaps or there are layers that could go in. So a kind of second draft process is really useful, and a third draft.
So do you write the novels sequentially?
Yeah, I've done that with every novel except for the Seed Collectors.
And was that because you were doing your ethnobotany alongside it? Were you having to still find out information to then write a certain section? Is that why was your studying kind of catching up with the narrative?
No, but you're right. I was doing this ethnobotany MSc at the same time, and it was research for the novel. But I was also teaching a lot at the University of Kent then. I was in charge of all of creative writing. So I had quite a big sort of admin role, a lot of responsibility. And I just found it harder to write around my other job. And yeah, usually the two kind of jobs blend together really nicely, and that's what I like about them. But just for that 3-year period, it was difficult. So I used writing as my relaxation during that period. So writing was my treat, and I still haven't really shaken that off. So when people say, oh, I find it hard to write, or I don't like it, or I sit down and I feel bad, or I've got writer's block, but I don't understand that, because to me, writing is like the biggest joy in my life. So, and it was particularly true at that point. So I would pull something that had happened that day, or some argument that I'd had, or something embarrassing, and just kind of write it down almost autobiographically, and then give it to a character and sort of work on it, and then just put it in a file. And it was only later that I started to put them together and try and put them in order. But that's the only time I've worked like that. Most of the time, I start with once upon a time and end with the end, and try and go through as the reader would.
And does your morning start with you rereading and or rewriting what you did yesterday, or do you just keep going?
Yeah, I like to start by rereading what I've done the day before. That is a good way to start, yeah.
Or it's a good way to put you in a bad mood, to write your way out of it?
I don't know. I just don't. And yeah, there's probably something wrong with me. I love writing, and I love all my writing. So I'm, this might sound a bit hateful, but I'll read what I've done the day before. And most of the time I'll think, oh, I really like that bit, or it's a bit pathetic, really. Yeah, sometimes there are big problems to solve, but yeah, that's a whole different thing. That's not a thing I'd want to face in the morning.
I love hearing you talking about how much you love writing, because I think we don't, I think there's a danger we put things under a microscope sometimes, and you think, oh, the challenges of this, and you think it's a bloody good job, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is a job,
Yeah.
and and some people are lucky enough to make it into something that sustains them through their life. But I was just thinking, if you go way back, you did your degree, and then I know you then wrote your 3 Lily Pascale books. Did you ever have a job?
My God, yes. So
I don't remember, and that's interesting to me that you've had this fantastic career, and you've written for 25 years. And I just thought, have you ever actually been in an office and done that kind of thing?
Oh God, no, not in an office, but Pizza Hut. And yeah, I mean, I've always worked. So when my tennis book comes out, which is it's about tennis, but it's also a kind of memoir about my life. And I was struggling to describe my early life in that book, because, as you know, it was very complicated. But essentially, I grew up on a council estate, and then a bit later moved to Chelmsford to live with my new stepfather, who was an academic.
Yeah.
But we never had a load of money. So yeah, when I was 15, I went to work in Dixie Fried Chicken, just glamorous, and then the video shop, and then loads of different restaurants and Pizza Hut and an architect's office. I think I got fired from fruit picking, which I think was
that must be a first,
a career high. Yeah, I think so, for being.
What are you doing? Eating too much fruit, or not picking enough?
I was a wastrel, apparently.
Okay, well that's a good thing. You should put that on your Wikipedia entry, I think.
Yeah, on my CV, on LinkedIn, I'll put that. And oh God, just every lowbrow job that you can think of. Video shop was quite good. I like that. Then went to university, worked all through university. I worked as a care assistant for a lot of that time as well. Worked in a nursing home, and I used to go and do residential care for elderly or disabled people, and then after
While you were also a full-time student. I mean,
yeah
as full-time as anyone is at university, but yeah.
Because I needed money to live. And then after that, I got a job at a sixth form, like a further education college in Southend, and worked there teaching media and communication studies A levels. That was to all the kids that had been, like, they'd failed their GCSEs and they were sort of coming back, or they'd been thrown out of their schools. So that was interesting. And then it was while I was doing that job that I suddenly thought, I'm going to be a writer.
Okay.
Threw it in, ran away to Devon, and then not long after that, I met you.
There we go. So do you remember the moment you sat down and started to write your first novel? I can't remember what was the first Lily Pascale book called?
That wasn't the first. I wrote a thing before that called Dog and Clowns, which is still in a drawer somewhere.
Okay. That's not for the disappearing floor, is it?
It's
alphabetically anyway. Yeah.
It was similar to the disappearing floor in a way, because I just started. I thought, I've got these characters, and my God, I didn't know what I was doing. Sometimes, honestly, when I see students that come in and they're starting off and they're so much better than I was when I started, that happens such a lot. When I think about how bad I was and all the mistakes I made, it's incredible, really.
Yeah, but the difference there is, of course, you have these people who've been accepted to come to the university to do creative writing, and you coming to writing was a more kind of pure thing, wasn't it? You just decided you wanted to be a writer. You didn't go off to get training to do it. But in a way, all that myriad of jobs you've talked about, in a way, they all filtered into those books, didn't they? And they probably still continue to.
Yeah, absolutely. And meeting all different kinds of people, and even the weird discipline that you need in a job like that. How do you get through a 7-hour shift at Pizza Hut when you're the only waitress that's turned up, and like there's one chef and he's got a terrible hangover and has forgotten to put all the olives on the pizzas, and just how do you get through that day? My days now are a lot easier than that, I have to say, and I'm really grateful for that too.
So how do you find space in your day for you when you've got other responsibilities? I mean, clearly you still teach creative writing, and you're dealing with a lot of people who've got problems that they're looking for you to help them solve, as all students do, not just on the page. I imagine you also have a kind of, you've got a role where you're looking after people a bit as well, aren't you? People newly arriving at university. There's all of that. And then you have to go home and be Scarlett Thomas, the novelist. And I just wondered, how do you shut the world out, or don't you? Maybe that's
I don't shut the world out at all, really, because again, I think it's about being open to things and drawing inspiration and ideas and voices and, I don't know, cool things and love and everything from the world around. So if it's going well for me, it's all a continuum. So, especially it is at the moment, because everything happens in the same place, right? Because we're all on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a bit of my triangle, then I'm talking to a student, then, but most of the students that I work with now are my PhD students. So I've got 8 of those. So I have a very close working relationship with them, probably a lot like you have with your authors. And so we'll do these kind of 1 hour, 1.5 hour sessions where we might be brainstorming. I might just have kind of done a 5-act triangle for a thing I'm doing, and then I'm going to do that on the Zoom whiteboard with a student for the thing they're doing. And it's all, I don't know, it's just all this big brilliant thing that I love, plotting and character, that it never runs out. It's just always so joyful, and so doing it with other people is also joyful.
Can you give us a little bit more detail about the 5-act triangle? Because I can see from comments coming in, people are intrigued, because I always think about the 3-act structure, but clearly I'm missing 2 acts somewhere.
Yeah, well, okay, gonna get quite nerdy now, but
please get nerdy as you like.
So this happened just maybe a year ago. I've always plotted in 3 acts before, and I've always taught 3 acts.
Yeah.
And then And obviously I've read every book on writing. I've written one myself, and then I read John Yorke's book Into the Woods, which is a great book, and I've actually read it twice. The first time I read it, I thought, wow, I quite like this guy, stuff about television, 3 acts, I understand that, and all the stuff about 5 acts I completely ignored. I thought that doesn't fit my brain. And then the next time I read it, I thought, what if I let some of the 5 act structure stuff go in? And then suddenly it's like one of the most exciting moments of my career, really, when I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is literally the thing I was waiting for, that makes sense of all my plots. So, okay, not everything can be plotted using a 5 act structure, but I've never known in 3 act structure where to put the midpoint. Like the midpoint is always a bit lost in a 3 act structure, I think. Whereas 5 acts on a triangle, it's not very good, but you start there, move along there in act 1.
Okay.
It's kind of mirrored, but it'll work.
No, it's working.
Up there. 2. The top is act 3, down there is act 4, and across there is act 5. And then the nice thing about, so I kind of developed this myself, but heavily inspired by some stuff in the John Yorke book and different triangle diagrams. It just reminds you to do turns and reversals. So when you get to the point of the triangle, you go in a new direction. At the top is the midpoint. So that's, people think you put the most exciting thing at the end. You don't. You put the most exciting thing in the middle. And then that beat, which we have in everything, genre fiction, literary fiction, television, film, which is the kind of all hope is lost moment. It depends on whether it's tragedy or comedy or whatever, but that usually comes on the turn from 4 into 5. And it's just, for me, it's very good to have a visual representation of that moment. The other exciting thing, probably boring you all to death now, but is how you can use it to mirror. So you, if you folded it in half, I didn't mean to have this as a prop, I would have done it more nicely, but if you fold it in half like that, then you see that act 2 and 4 mirror each other, and acts 1 and 5 mirror each other. And so you can go back and do callbacks or reversals, and kind of, if people are worried that that sounds formulaic or sort of one triangle fits all.
Not at all. Look, some of the comments are, "You are so inspiring, Scarlett." So don't worry, this is.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Fantastic. I love the geometry. I love this way of sort of turning corners and mirroring. That's I've never heard anybody talk about structure in that way, because normally I think of writers with a kind of wall planner, like a sort of January to December one with, but actually a book is a shape, isn't it? It's not and I know a rectangle's a shape, but it's not a dynamic shape, is it?
No, I mean, this is quite new for me to use it myself and for teaching, but whenever I have gone through it with students, it's been so enjoyable. So we do it kind of on a whiteboard, and just those brilliant aha moments when you realize that you can do some mirroring thematically, or that you've put something in act 1 that you've forgotten to come back to in act 5. And it can really lead to some incredible sorts of deep, meaty, probably the wrong word, kind of stories. And it goes right back to Aristotle and the whole concept of the reversal and the recognition and all of that. So yeah, very exciting. I love being excited by new things sort of at my stage of my career, because it's, otherwise what do you do? Just repeat everything for the next 20 years.
So do you think you've been subconsciously using the 5 act structure before? Because if you laid that over some of your earlier books, that would work, wouldn't it? You haven't become a different writer just because you found a new structure.
No, but it's interesting that I've picked it up as I'm moving into television a bit more.
Yeah.
In a way, I mean, television is so much more plotty, so it can hold 5 acts a bit better. I mean, I'm going to guess probably Great Expectations has 5 acts, and probably War and Peace has 5 acts, but The Prime Miss Jean Brodie would have 3 acts, and Oligarchy has 3 acts. So, and those kind of half-hour comedy dramas on television still have 3 acts. So it's not that one replaces the other. I guess they're just 2 different systems.
So just thinking about, you've written in you've written in a number of genres. Obviously, you've written. I mean, Lily Pascale were, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way. They were quite straightforward crime books. You know, there was something that Lily investigated and found out what happened, and you know, we came. And then obviously you moved on to the much more multi-layered books like End of Mr. Y and PopCo, where clearly as a writer you were excited by the world outside, and you were out there in a way that was another university for you, wasn't it? You were going off and discovering about, you know, thermodynamics or about ethnobotany or whatever, and bringing it back into the story. Tell me about the moment that you decided you wanted to write for a younger reader, because that must have been I know you were in a car at one point. I know that's part of something there, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's the picture, and
there we are. Yeah,
glows in the dark.
This, yep. Lovely cover that.
God, the comments are good, aren't they? So I just want to read the comments, but I'm supposed to be listening to you. How do you get your brain to do that? Can I read the comments afterwards, or do they disappear?
I'm sure we can find a way of capturing them. But anyway.
Thank you, because people might be asking things that I can respond to. But anyway, yeah. So the prequel to this is actually the tennis book, where I took a year. It was always a book project, but it was supposed to go better than it did. So I took a year to play tennis to see how far I could get as a then 41-year-old woman. I was interested to see how far I could go. I was sort of following a childhood dream. You've disappeared, Simon, but I'm going to carry on talking anyway. And it was supposed to be a heartwarming story about being an older woman doing sport, but I got a bit too obsessed with it, and I had to play loads of tournaments. I was really shit, but I did make it to number 6 in the country in my age group. And oh, Sam's back.
Me just I pop back in. Well, oh, he's coming back in. Sorry, there's a lot of wiggling around going on here. I'm going to go back in a second.
So yeah, I got to the end of this year playing tennis really seriously, and I decided to try and train like a professional and stuff like that, and basically had a massive kind of meltdown, breakdown, slight eating disorder situation, just like mental health disaster. And the way I got better from that was partly through kind of I was reading more children's fiction that had made me feel better when I was a child, actually, and going back to that more sort of cozy, familiar world. And you know, I kind of secretly believe in magic and full moons and, you know, dancing around bonfires and stuff like that. So I just, I was on the way somewhere with my partner, driving along. We go through or past a tiny little village called Dragon's Green. And I said to him, well, if I ever wrote a children's book, I'd call it Dragon's Green. What a brilliant title. And he said, but you'd never write a children's book, would you? And I said, no, of course not, for insert your own reasons there. But then by the time we got where we were going, which was a couple of hours later, I'd started to plot this book called Dragon's Green, where, you know, a girl discovers she's magic and she's got a grandfather and he's got a dusty old library full of magical books. And yeah, I mean, I loved writing those books, and most readers that read my adult books make it sound like porn now. That's one key reason to not write children's fiction, is then you have to describe your adult books as adult books, and it sounds fun. Anyway. But most of my readers like all of them. So
do you think about your readers much?
Yeah.
What do you think a Scarlett Thomas reader looks like?
Really cool. Like
obviously.
All the cool tattoos that I wish I had.
Yeah.
All on one.
It's not too late. Yeah.
Amazing hair. Nice jawline. Kind of an anorak, but like a really cool one. Nice T-shirt with some slogan on in an Arial font. Am I being too specific?
No, I like the fact the font is Arial as well.
Yeah, I don't like slogan T-shirts with the wrong font. It makes me feel funny.
So is Arial is a word that you like, clearly.
Oh yeah.
You have a character called Arial.
I do. I don't like it when students write their work in Arial though. that's wrong.
Okay. Do you ever hand write your work? Are you always on a typewriter?
Yeah, I'm always okay.
There we go.
Yeah, I write. So I sit here. The reason that's there is because I'm at my desk, and so I'll be typing away. But I handwrite notes while I'm going. I often do kind of plots and shaping and points to pick up later and stuff like that. I feel like you need different dimensions when you're plotting and writing. Like you need the Word file, which is the actual text, but then
Yep.
you need a way of compiling all your notes and research. And then you need a further level, which is an actual notebook with ink on it. So that system seems to work for me, but yeah, it needs to have a lot of different planes at once.
So maybe the next iteration of the 5-act structure is going to be a 3-dimensional triangle that you can actually just sort of reach into and put plot lines going back into the past and coming.
God.
I mean, it could happen, couldn't it?
Yes.
I've got you thinking now. I can see that.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
So the television that you're writing at the moment, are you adapting one of your own books, or it's an original piece for television?
So I don't know how much I'm allowed to tell you, but
well, I mean, you don't. I don't want you to even think you're crossing a line. I'm just interested in. Some people say that the worst person ever to adapt a book is the author.
Yes, but I am working on an adaptation of The End of Mr. Y at the moment.
I mean, you've told us then. Thank you.
No, but that's when I got to a point with the producer on that where he's doing his thing now. So for a bit, so I'm working on an original project as well. I've got a couple of original projects in the pipeline.
Because I'm interested in that notion of returning to a book you wrote a long time ago. Because End of Mr. Y was how long ago now? 15 years ago, maybe.
Sorry, I'm reading the comments now.
I have pink hair but no tattoos, and I prefer Ariel. There we go.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading. It's I don't have tattoos either.
I'm interested in that notion of, because I look at your career and I see this huge forward momentum, which is fantastic. And your books are kind of going where your passion is. Going back to Mr. Y, which was a number of years ago now, is that odd coming back to something to adapt it?
Yes. Yes and no. I mean, the project came out of the blue for me a little bit, and I was determined to really do it properly and learn as much as I could about how this process works, and how to write really great television. And watching really great television, and I want to write it too. So I sat down with the book and just went through it page by page. Oh, I don't know where it is, but it's I should have brought it out to show you, but it's every single page is covered in notes. Just what episode this might go in, and just things that need to be picked up, things that need to be made clear. And I just read it through really, really carefully. And it was interesting actually, because you'll remember how crazy that time was when we published The End of Mr. Y, and how I'd be on a train from Aberystwyth crying because there was no first class. Judge me if you like. And listening to sad music and feeling heartbroken over something in my life, and it was all like that. Meanwhile, out in the world, there were posters for the book on tube stations, which I never even saw because I was on tour all the time. And the whole thing was such a big explosion. It was the first time I'd had a really successful book, and I think I had a bit of a meltdown. So I never really appreciated it, and I certainly after that I never went back and reread the book or had a chance to enjoy the thing I'd created. And people would say to me, "Oh, it's my favorite book," or "I really love it," and I really felt that from them. But for me, I'd kind of lost sight of what was good about the book. So to come back to it, 13 years later and read it through was a really great experience actually. And I thought, oh, thank God it's not it's not a terrible book after all, and it didn't go as wrong as I thought it did in that phase, and it did. Yeah, so it was really nice, and I think having enough distance from it so that I could think about it existing in a different form, like on television. I think it, if we can, I mean, we're sort of going ahead with it, but television's really slow to get going. But
Yeah,
if
of course,
we get it out, it's going to be amazing, I think.
I think a lot of writers, and I know a lot of people who watch this webinar, the challenge they have is getting distance from their own work. Now, clearly with that's an extraordinary thing, 13 years distance. But I mean, a lot of people say, what they should do is put the book in a drawer 6 months after finishing it and then come back to it. And it's that, well, what do you say to your students? I mean, clearly they don't have that luxury, do they?
I say to them, 12 weeks to write something incredible with no breaks. Go, because that's how it works at university. Yeah, the kind of book in a drawer for, I think Stephen King says it's either 6 weeks or 3 months. I can't remember. Yeah, but you hear that advice a lot. I've never been able to do it. I'm so impatient. If like a package comes and I'm excited about it, I can't wait. I have to open it immediately. If I've written a book or draft of a book that I'm excited about, I want to sort of hit send and send it to.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you finish the book, how quickly does it go off to Canongate or whoever it might be?
Like the next day.
Really?
A bit, yeah. Well, I mean, by the time I get to that point, I'll hopefully have drafted it 2 or 3 times, read it through, put the corrections in. So that really, it's not like the end of the first draft, but yeah, I probably don't put projects aside for quite enough time.
And what's the relationship with the editor like? How's that evolved over the time?
Yes, I'm quite lucky. I've had the same editor since the end of Mr. Y, actually. And so we've kind of found a way of working. Obviously, you want your editor to come back and go, oh my God, this is the first time I've read a manuscript that has no mistakes. In fact, it's the best thing I've ever read. And here are the
I'd be really suspicious, wouldn't you, if someone said that?
I mean...
So have they read it?
Well, yeah. But yeah, when you get feedback, it's always interesting because there are some bits that will take you by surprise, or you won't understand, or you'll think the person's a massive dick for, saying this really stupid thing. And, oh my God, you've loved them for all these years as your colleague, but now you hate them and everything about yourself and your life. Like, that's a normal reaction, I think, to being edited. And you need to take those couple of days where you just kind of sit with that feedback and try and understand where the other person's coming from. And even if a piece of feedback or a note is a bit stupid, or you think, but I did that on page 50,
haven't you read it properly?
Yeah. But the very fact that they've forgotten it was on page 50 is a problem. That's a problem that you have to fix.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I mean, I'll read a whole manuscript the whole way through in one sitting and then remind myself that your average reader is going to be reading 20 pages and falling asleep, or reading a bit on the bus and then coming back to it the next day. So you almost need to sort of build that in, don't you? What about reviews as well? Is that something that you take any interest in, or is it at that point your head is in the next book anyway?
Yeah, I sort of wish I was one of those people that just doesn't read the reviews and isn't interested and is above it all. But in reality, I'm just kind of Googling myself, just after a book's come out. I'm just, very keen to have that feedback. And I was a bit scared with Oligarchy because of the subject matter about what those reviews are going to be like. And apart from the only single bad review for that book was in the actual newspaper that I read, but all around the world, the States and everywhere else, it got way better reviews than I was expecting. So I guess it was, obviously it was nice to read those reviews, but it was nice to have the fact that I'd taken a risk validated, that, you know, that I'd done something. And, you know, when you write something, you put it out there. And I guess, is it arrogant to not want to know what people say back? Or is it self-preservation? I don't know. But I've never had a situation where I've written something that's got all bad reviews. I don't know how I'd cope with that. But yeah, it's nice to know that what you're doing is working for people, but then you also don't want to become complacent and just think, oh, I'm so awesome, you know, I can just write what I want, because it's, you know, it's always hard work, brilliant work, but hard work.
But that's interesting. Are you still writing for yourself?
I don't. It's a bit controversial probably now, because I know what most people say about this, but I don't think I'm writing for myself ever. I mean, on one level I am, because as I've said, I love doing it. I love picking the right word, writing beautiful sentence. You know, I feel like a crafts person who's doing the craft that they love. So, you know, I'm sanding down my thing and it's brilliant, but I'm not doing that for myself. So like the thing I'm making is not a thing I'm going to keep. It's a thing I'm giving away. And I'm slightly suspicious of the approach, which is like, well, I'll just write something for me. And then other people can take it or leave it. I think if we're storytellers, we are storytelling to, you know, your person on the bus who's a bit tired after a shit day at work, and we want to give them a good time. So I think keeping that person in mind is important, not as a demographic, but just as a kind of human being.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we all need to keep thinking about the person on the bus. I think that's really, because I think publishing, we forget about the consumer, don't we, a lot of the time. Something I was going to ask, and this is, God, the time has sped by, but how well do you know your characters? And that may sound like an odd question, but in the last few weeks, we've had one author who's kind of said that the plot is what matters, and the characters kind of just, they take the characters along for the ride and they do what they need to. And we've had other authors who say that they almost do like a formal hot seating questionnaring of their characters, and they know everything about them. They know how they would, almost like in a video game, you kind of know if you take them into one area what they're going to do. So do you start with character? Do you start with plot?
Yeah, I ask myself this quite a lot as well, because it's something I'm obviously trying to work out how to teach. And the way I teach is usually, I think, how do I do this thing, and how can I explain that to someone else so it might be useful to them? So I think it's a bit of both. I think plot and character inform each other so much that you can't really pull them apart. So, for example, tragedy is a classic plot structure where an admirable person starts out trying to do some great thing, but it's also a bad idea, the thing. And then it goes well for a while. Then they make a really, really massive mistake.
Yeah.
Then it starts to go wrong. There's a glimmer of hope, and then everyone dies. So that plot has a particular type of character that goes with it. So it has to be what Aristotle called the admirable person, the king, the celebrity, the larger than life person who is trying to do this super ambitious scheme. So I'm not going to put a kind of Bridget Jones type character in a tragedy, because that's not the right character for that story. But so having sort of worked along those lines for a while, I would start to flesh out a character, but I tend to work with, and this is in Monkeys with Typewriters, it's an idea called the super objective, which comes from Stanislavski, the Russian theatre director who was at the sort of start of the 20th century. And it's the idea that if you know the one main driving force of the character, the thing that they want more than anything else, that gives you the answer to everything else you need to know. So it's a real top-down approach, rather than, there's the kind of bottom-up approach that people do where they do like a chart of favorite color, childhood pets, you know, sex life, history, all of that type of stuff. What do they have for breakfast? What clothes do they wear? So that can be useful sometimes, but I think if we want to know what a character is going to do in a situation, it's all about the super objective. So a person who values control above all else is going to take a different approach or make a different choice than a person who values comfort above all else. than a person who values power above all else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I tend to work on that level of the super objective.
God, I think I want to be one of your students. This is just fantastic, and the response here is absolutely amazing. Somebody, Anita has talked about, said, I love the advice in the book where Scarlett tells you to find a word in the dictionary which sums up the theme of your book. Does that, when you're writing a book, do you start with the word or do you end with the word?
I think writing is almost a process of trying to find the word.
Right, brilliant.
Because, and again, this is something I do with the students, and it's such a brilliant exercise. You know, we all come in with dictionaries, or, I mean, now, you know, we've got the OED online that we subscribe to at the university, so we put that up on the big screen. And when you actually look at the meaning of some words, there's so much just packed into one single word. And just to have that focus for the piece that you've written is really important, and to find the right word. You know, so the word might be enigma or hope or, I don't know, point, or anything. But usually it's a word that has multiple different meanings. And it can sound a bit reductive, but it actually really does help you to just pull something together.
Does it help you with the title as well? Because I think that's in a way, a title has got to kind of, it's got to do many things, hasn't it? There's a bit of a fan dance with the title, but I mean, oligarchy is a fantastic title.
Oh, thank you.
Because we all have kind of slightly different views of what that might be. And I think the cover reflects that brilliantly with a kind of multifaceted light refracting in different ways. But was it always going to be called Oligarchy? I mean, you said it was a short story, wasn't it? Maybe
Yeah, it started off being the oligarch's daughter. And it was very much the beginning of that idea was very much the idea of this Russian oligarch's daughter turning up at a boarding school.
Yeah.
So I've told you about my terrible poor background for one answer, but this is the answer where you find out I went to boarding school as well. So just I've had a bit of a weird life, but I did for 2 years. I went to quite a posh boarding school, and that feeling of being a complete outsider and turning up in this new environment, that was where the idea for the book came from. But then I realized that I really wanted to write about power structures and power systems among teenage girls, and how an idea would take hold, and how ideas have currency in a situation like that. So I thought oligarchs, also oligarchy. And then, yeah, it was a nice moment when I thought, oh, that's what the book's about. It's about oligarchy. So that's a really good example of where the seed word and the title are the same.
And I've always thought oligarchy would make a fantastic film or TV, but you know, maybe that's something down the line.
Well, no, it's an exciting moment of my career actually, because when Oligarchy went out, it was just a PDF. Then we got like 9 offers for the television rights. That was exciting.
There we go. So is that something that is in development, or I mean, as we all know, the TV world is it's not straightforward, is it?
No.
I mean, publishing, you know, you get a contract, you write a book, it gets published. You know, TV, it seems to be about where someone's got to invent television at some point and then decide, you know, design the chair someone's got to sit in. It's not a straightforward medium.
I know, which is, I mean, it should put you off, shouldn't it? But yeah.
But I mean, when you write, I mean, you're obviously creating a 3-dimensional world on paper. But when you're now writing for television, are there a different set of disciplines there? Because quite clearly you're going straight to the viewer, aren't you? You're maybe doing less, are you, as a writer in TV?
No, well, I don't know. I mean, like you say, it's so true. You do have to kind of invent television, build the television, you know, put an aerial up, all of that before you can do anything.
Another aerial, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Maybe that's the word. I don't know.
Interesting.
Somebody said that the word for this hour, the word for Scarlett is brilliant. So there we go.
Well, thank you.
I can't believe we're actually coming towards the end of the hour, but
do you want the answer though? I can't remember.
I definitely want the answer. If you're happy to keep going another couple of minutes, I'd love to.
Yeah, it's really different, and I didn't think I would like it, which is why I hadn't ever thought of writing for the screen before last year. I always thought I was a novelist only, like on the page writer. The thing that's really different is the amount of planning and the amount of just note-taking and research. I'm doing so much more before committing any words to the page. I haven't opened a final draft for months because the actual act of writing a script comes so far down the line. So I spend all my time on Evernote doing character profiles or research or beats, like lists of beats, my triangles. Doing my triangles on PowerPoint, that's my top tip for where to do your triangles. You can draw a nice triangle on PowerPoint.
Okay. Brilliant. I see you're back with us, Sam.
I am indeed. Those are fantastic tips, and you'll see the comments later. You will be able to go through them, Scarlett, because on the writing.ie Facebook page, this video will pop up and all the comments will be underneath. So if you want to go through, and if there's any that you haven't seen in detail, you can go and certainly read those. There's some really, really good questions too. One person, sorry, it's gone past now, was just asking, what would be your one key piece of advice for new writers?
One word again.
Oh God. This changes all the time. I mean, partly I want to say get off social media, but that probably doesn't fit because we're actually on social media right now. Find your own. Oh God, this is going to sound a bit idiotic. Find your own sacred space for it. Find and believe in what you're doing. So don't buy into all the stuff about how writing's hard and it's horrible, and we're all tortured artists from the 17th, 18th century. We're not. We're people living in the 21st century with loads of luxuries. So just enjoy it. That's what it is. Enjoy it.
Brilliant.
That's fantastic.
I was a bit nervous about this hour, as I always am, but I have to say I've really loved talking to you. I always love meeting up and talking to you, but this has been fantastic, and I kind of know more about you now than I have learned over the last 20 years. So that's we should do this more often. But thank you so much for giving up some of your sacred time. It's been brilliant.
It's absolutely fascinating. I'm really interested in the whole 5 acts, the triangle. I think that whole visual way of plotting and everything is brilliant, and I know people have been picking up on that. And it's the second time actually John Yorke's book's being mentioned, Into the Woods, as a tool that people love. So it's fantastic to hear. So do we want to just see if there's any questions? There's just a couple of questions. So one person was asking, I'm just going to ask you one or two, Scarlett, while we're here. Somebody, if you've got time, are you okay for time?
Yeah,
fabulous. Somebody's asking about writing different genre. Would you recommend that, or would you recommend for people to focus on one?
Sorry, I'm reading the comments and listening, which is really bad.
No, do. If you want to answer them, far away.
No, I think at some point before, I'll come back to your question. At some point before, somebody asked about whether I covered the 5-act triangle in Monkeys with Typewriters, and I don't, because I wrote that book, oh God, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. So
needs a new edition, doesn't it?
Well, you say that. So I'm not pushing this because it's a paid for thing, but I've got a Patreon, and on that I do like a weekly writing thing. Quite a lot about the 5-act triangle on there, but also you don't have to sign up for that. I think my next writing book will probably be about that because I'm so fascinated. There's so much to it, so that's coming.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
But the official question was about genre, and I think as the years go by, I believe in genre less, probably. I think, I'm not sure I believe in strict divisions. I think good storytelling is good storytelling. And especially now moving into television, you might have aspects of a procedural structure, which is very genre, attached to something completely different. And I think it's about sort of mixing and matching the pieces that you like, and trying to be as original as possible, but not so original that it's wacky and no one knows what you're talking about.
So write the story that's in you really at the time, rather than worrying about genre. Excellent. So I'm just going to scroll back here through. people loving your tips, particularly the triangle. So that'd be great. Basically, a sort of writing guide information, is it? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, because people might want to sign up for it?
Yes, but no pressure. I hate pushing.
No, do tell us.
You've been doing it. You've done that for a few years now, the Patreon thing, haven't you? And it's really interesting to see how it's developing.
Yeah, yeah. So you can sign up different levels. There's a level where you just get a newsletter every so often, but there's a level where you get an email from me about writing every week. And I actually really enjoy doing that. I wondered when that would sort of run out or get old. But the way I tend to do it is I think about a problem or an interesting experience I've had that week writing myself, and fill people in on what my, where I am with my writing that week, and then talk people through how to do a particular thing. So sometimes it's plotting, sometimes it's characterization, sometimes it's literally how to tidy your desk because I had to do a big tidy.
I think that's fascinating. I do. We have a writers group called Writers Inc, and I do this thing called Tuesday Tips, where I write, and I do exactly the same thing. It's whatever's happening in the day or happened in the previous week. And I always think people find that aren't going to be that interested, but they do. And I think your experience of the things you've come across, particularly because you're teaching, and you're going to come across lots of different issues, in your own writing and other people's. I think that'd be absolutely fascinating. So do check that out. We'll make sure that it goes into the comments. So really, we could be here all day. So I think we're going to have to call it a day now.
Yeah.
Thank you for the amazing questions as well. It's been really enjoyable for me as well to talk about the thing I love.
Brilliant.
Lovely Simon and Sam.
Oh, thank you so much.
See you again soon.
Indeed, we'll be back here next week, guys, at 12 on Friday, and I'll be talking to Amit Dand about his crime novels. So we'll sign off for now, and with a bit of luck, Scarlett will have time to go through, have a quick look at the questions, and answer anything that we didn't get to. So thank you very much indeed. Thanks, Scarlett. Thanks, Simon.
Okay.